dev velocity has been going up. Engineers are shipping features faster than ever. Most quality teams are not able to keep up. There is a significant amount of context that's required from the user experience perspective that Claude code at this point is pretty blind to. We don't see that changing. We see that there will be another solution that will be responsible for the product intelligence part of it. One bet that we essentially made is that a QA will involve a lot more product knowledge. And the company that we're working on, Pi, essentially stands for Product Intelligence Engine. Product is at the heart of most organizations. But if you really look at specifically the larger organizations, they're pretty far disconnected from what's going on the product day-to-day. So what we are actually providing is we have the most up-to-date information on how your product is evolving.
Today, I'm joined by Dhaval Shreyas, founder of Pi, a company building an AI-native quality layer for software teams. Special thank you to Janu for connecting us, his co-founder. Pi recently raised its initial round from Outlander VC, and it's going after a problem that I think becomes more important as AI coding tools get better. If Claude Code, Cursor, and Copilot help teams ship code more quickly, then who validates that the product still works the way the user expects? That's the core question behind this conversation. We talk about why traditional QA breaks down when development velocity increases, why testing may need to move from scripted checks to deeper product understanding, and how Pi is trying to build agents that can discover product flows, understand user context, surface real issues, and eventually turn the product context into value beyond QA. Now, onto the podcast. Dhaval, thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Hey, Nick, thanks for having me here, and excited about having this conversation.
So I'd love to get your point of view on where the category is today. There's obviously a lot of implied bias when someone says QA or quality assurance. And so could you walk through what the space is today, who the individuals are within a company that typically own QA, and what the current tools are?
Yeah, I think quality, as most people would recognize, is a very underappreciated part of the software development lifecycle. And underappreciated in the sense that it still exists, which means it's a critical part of the software development lifecycle, but also something that comes towards the end of the process, right? The QA teams get involved after pretty much everything is built, and a QA function that's performing great usually doesn't get noticed at all. The only time a QA function gets noticed is when something's breaking, something shipped, some critical bug that got shipped is when QA comes on the spotlight and they look into what's working and what's not working. As a result of that, it just tends to be the case that it's usually underinvested in, and it quickly ends up becoming this bottleneck. And what that means is in a 3-week software development lifecycle, usually a week is what they spend on quality. And the processes that's followed there is, for the most part, still manual. Manual is still the workhorse of most quality processes in most teams. And that involves going through many different user paths, user flows, following the scripts, verifying that assertions mentioned in the script, either manually or automated, is hit. And then there's a check mark or no check mark.
Yeah, that hits home for me. At center for much of the company's lifecycle, QA sat alongside engineering, but was essentially a separate function. And the work would get handed off in a pretty manual, fragmented way with product pretty deeply involved after the fact. And so totally understand that. Could you walk through where that process breaks down today in practice?
Yeah, for sure. So a few things are happening right now. Dev velocity has been going up. Engineers are shipping features faster than ever. And most quality teams are not able to keep up. And we talked to a team recently, and they were talking about how the engineers are shipping features at a very rapid pace, and they're able to test maybe half, barely even that much of the new features coming in. And they literally have no bandwidth to see if the regression passes, if the product as a whole is working anymore. There's just no bandwidth anymore. Everybody's excited about shipping faster now. They're trying to keep up with the wave that's going on. And it's the velocity is just not able to keep up with it. And the team we were talking to, they were like, we give our approval and hope for the best. And now that's the standard right now.
Well, I think that's a really good entry point into agentic QA and how Pi is redefining the space. So I'd love to get your overview on just this new category, and also if the end user of the category changes in your mind.
I guess different teams are thinking about this differently. One way to think about it is like, do everything that's happening in the QA cycle, do it with agents. And there are a lot of tools for this. There's playwright agents that have come up, basically that'll help you write the scripts in an automated manner. And there are all these different new tools coming up that will also help with this AI-driven testing and so on. We are thinking about this differently in the sense that we think QA as a whole will mean very different things. So one bet that we essentially made is that a QA will involve a lot more product knowledge, right? So I don't think in the future, it's not going to be the case that you're just going to be following the script, these assertions and steps, and just validating as per that. I think QA will require much more in-depth understanding of how your product works and feels. And if you look at many of the great companies out there, the job of testing is now actually falling on product managers. Why product managers? They understand the product really well. They are the best proxy for a user. They understand the business context a lot more. And they're able to leverage that to actually test the flows that matter. So in this new world, our belief is that the product is going to be at the heart of testing. And the company that we're working on, Pi, essentially stands for Product Intelligence Engine. So we start with developing a very good understanding of how your product works, and then leverage that information to test out the different user flows and make sure that everything is working great. Not just following the scripts. For example, scripts may go through a path, will make sure that the buttons all exist, they all work, but they may be completely blind to the fact that the layout is completely bonkers, right? Or the buttons are cut off or some other visual, they'll be completely blind towards that if you're going through the automated route. So with Pi, you're a lot more conscious about that. We are using your product like your user product. And we'd follow the script, but we're also looking for anything else that may affect the user experience.
I see. Could you help me understand the model end to end from deployment of the tool Pi to who actually is the end user? And then what does that journey look like from understanding the product to validating the product, and how the end user actually kind of utilizes it across the journey?
Yeah, for sure. So we have two components that we're currently working with. The first one is the core testing component, the Pi test component. And the way that works is we have our initial conversation with our customer. And after we show them what our tool is about, we immediately suggest a discovery process. And the discovery process entails giving us a URL to their staging environment, if it's a web app, their iPhone app, their Android build, any of these, and some credentials we could use, log in and use the product. This is pretty much all we need to do our initial discovery process. And with just these pretty small pieces of information, we go through the discovery process and we catch up with them. This takes us an hour or two. We can catch up with them the next day or maybe the next week. And we go through the report that has been generated as part of this. And that report will essentially show them the coverage in terms of the different flows that we're covering through our test cases, and also the issues that we're finding as part of this process. So this is, again, an absolute game changer, right? So to getting to any reasonable amount of automation coverage, it takes teams quarters, months, sometimes years, and most teams honestly never reach a sustainably high level of automated coverage. It's just extremely expensive to create and expensive to maintain. So us being able to go in with a pretty high level, we target to 60 to 80% in terms of your core user flows. We want to get that covered pretty much even before they sign the contract with us. And that's the starting point, and we go from there. So we're able to show immediate value from day one.
I see. And what are the key pieces? If you could walk me through kind of how you're able to structurally embed that context in your own system, how is that more efficient than what's been done traditionally? I'd love to understand kind of just the stack a little bit.
We use LLMs quite extensively, so it's extremely obviously models driven. And the way we do it is we kind of give our agents a persona of the user, and that persona starts off with a blank slate, and it continues to iterate on the persona as it discovers more and more about the app itself. Yep. And our discovery agent basically knows nothing about the app. It sees the login and gets some context develops its own understanding of what the product is, and then it continues interacting with this thing. It goes through a particular flow, and it's immediately creating branches of itself, saying, hey, there is this new tab that we should explore and understand more about. It spawns off a different agent and it does its thing. And then similar branching happens such that we get a complete understanding of what your product is about within an hour. And each of these discovery agents are continuing to update its own context about the different user flows, different actions that the user might want to take. It tries to create a prioritized list of what features or what actions are important from the business perspective. And using that context, then the next phase, it goes in and generates very detailed test cases that would be important for us to cover as part of our release process.
One of the things that was always a challenge for us is that there was so much business context within the test cases. So, if you could imagine an agent going through without context, and it might think, hey, things are working well from the outside standpoint. But then when you have the context of the product requirements, you see, oh, there's an issue there. And so how do you work with, each company has their own set of unique product requirements, business requirements? Is that part of the ingestion process, or is that kind of downstream?
So what we're promising is pretty much with no other context other than these things, we can get you pretty far. Mm-hmm. But what we also enable is adding additional context if you have those available with you.
I see.
So if you have PRDs, if you have help center docs that we can go through, if you have test cases that you're currently using as part of your testing process, it could be either scripts, it could be manuals, Excel sheets that you're using to go through the different thing. We're able to consume those, and that adds a higher level of context for what we're looking for. So that's where we borrow the harder requirements in terms of it could be like mathematical stuff, like these numbers should interact in this way, and this should be the result by doing this operation and so on. Yeah. So we're able to consume that context that way. But even without that, we make a lot of assumptions, and we have a mechanism where our users can go in and tell us when we get something wrong. So we expose something called issues, which is like something that we think is slightly off. And a lot of assumptions have been made while generating those issues. And this gives us an opportunity for our users to go in and say, hey, this is actually working as expected because of X, Y, and Z.
I see.
And we're able to take that context and get better at it day in and day.
That's cool. So if I'm understanding this correctly, your users can start either very, very simply without much effort on their side, which is, hey, I'm not going to give Pi any context and it'll go in, or they can give you product context and it'll perform that much better. But your point is, hey, regardless of that, we're going to generate some level of confidence score on any of the major assumptions that we want to question. And if the confidence score is below a certain point, we'll kick out to the end user to validate and train our models, basically.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Yep. That's fantastic. So as you think about the go-to-market motion, where do you find the most interest, success in your funnel? Is it, generally startups, smaller companies that are likely to go change or evolve their processes, or are you finding larger companies with just a huge amount of manual test costs today?
We need companies to have hit the point where quality is important, right? Like when you're just starting off and you're trying to find the product market fit, you may not care if a particular feature is broken or something else is not working as expected. However, as you're getting legit customers, paying customers, you see some kind of product market fit, you care about moving faster now. And at that point, quality does become a criteria. So we find Series A plus, I think, has been a great fit for us. We have customers who are S&P 500 and so on as well. So it's a pretty wide spectrum, but anybody who cares about quality, I think we're a great fit there. In terms of who we're talking with, a VP of Eng CTOs are very excited to be talking with us right now. A lot of these engineering leaders are trying to grapple with this new world that these AI driven development has created, and how to make it work in a way that doesn't break the user experience, consumer experience for them, so that they're very interested in the service that we're providing. We're also talking to a lot of forward-looking QA leads who are clearly overwhelmed with what's going on and are excited about trying out tools that will help them not just keep up. Several of our customers now are like, they've got regression covered, they've got new features covered. They're now building coverage for features that are not even being built yet, that they're expecting to be landing soon. So now they're getting ahead of the engineering teams as well, being able to do that.
That's fascinating. As you deploy a customer, how involved is your team in that deployment? Do you have a forward deployed engineer model? Is it lighter touch?
Yeah, we have a forward deployed, we call them a PQE, which is a high quality expert. They're baked into the service.
Okay.
So we have a human element involved from day one. They help them with the initial coverage, and we're also taking over the maintenance of the test cases. So it's kind of like, once you have a test case that's added to our library of test cases, we are responsible for now maintaining them.
I see.
So that's also another big pain point for our customers. Usually when you're working on automated test suites, for example, you have engineers go in, they build pretty high levels of coverage, but things start breaking pretty quickly onwards. And as long as you have somebody continuously working on keeping them up, they keep adding value. If not, they start flaking and you start commenting them out, and you kind of like start seeing reduced value from this effort. So we take that out of our customers' plate. So we are responsible for creating and maintaining these test cases on an ongoing basis.
Okay.
And that there is a human, PQE element, which is like our human experts working with our customers to build that. And there's also a pretty big autonomous nature to this maintenance as well.
I see. Okay. So how do you think about pricing in this model? Is it utilization driven, mainly based off of the PQE?
Yeah, this is something that continues to be in flux. We're figuring this out as we go along. Right now, we're selling that the PQE, as we talked about earlier, PQE has a certain amount of capacity in terms of the number of test cases they can maintain in an ongoing manner. And also they have a limit in terms of how many test case executions that they'll be able to do. And then we scale them based on the number of PQEs that our customers they need based on their iteration cycles or the surface area they want to cover as part of that.
Gotcha. I'd love to get your thoughts on the competitive space. You and I were talking a little bit earlier, but it's obviously a very quickly evolving space. I know at Center, we use tools like Selenium, I believe, in source. And then we also, at points in time, use QA Wolf, which is more of a managed service. But there's also this agentic coding agent space that's obviously evolving fast, and folks are starting to use that for testing. So where do you see the competition of the future? How do you see the landscape?
Great question. I think this whole thing is evolving really quickly, right? And I think the landscape's shifting very, very quickly. We are, I guess, more like QA Wolf than Selenium in the sense that we are responsible for the coverage there. However, QA Wolf, for example, is still focused on tests, and we are intentionally moving away from tests. We are thinking of coverage flows, and you don't ever have to look at the failing test cases, right? That's a big thing. We expose what we're calling issues, right? So this is like something that's not working as expected, and the expectations can be baked into the flows that we are maintaining for you, or it could be something that we just noticed was like slightly off. So our customers, they look at issues and they help us build coverage, right? They're slightly disconnected from the actual test cases which are used to find those issues and say. So kind of like QA Wolf, except we iterate a lot more quickly. I think QA Wolf promises 80% coverage in 4 months. We kind of like promise that within the first 2 weeks. And we're also able to evolve a lot more quickly with your team. As part of our new offering, we can actually plug into your GitHub. We can look at the changes that your team is developing, and we'll, in background, we're adding coverage as you're building out these new features. This is part of our Pi Loop offering. And so the iteration cycles there is like literally like a day, right? Your change lands today. By end of day, we usually have tests that are built to test out the specific flows that you just created.
Makes sense. And I'm sure your customers will ask you, as their own engineers are moving more and more of their development process to the agents actually doing the code as opposed to them manually building out the code, they'll probably ask something like, hey, why isn't this just a part of Claude Code's own prompting process where it'll build the code and then test the code? And so how do you explain the need for a separate solution to kind of own that agentic testing, the agentic QA process?
As of now, there is a significant amount of context that's required from the user experience perspective that Claude Code at this point is pretty blind to. There are like Chrome extension that Claude Code has, which is kind of cool, but if you've ever used it, you'll know that it tests maybe that one flow you're working on, and even that is kind of slow. We basically do the same thing, but 1,000x the velocity and with that level of context, right? We don't see that changing. We see that there will be another solution that will be responsible for the product management or the product intelligence part of it, and to make sure that things will be working as expected, and the coding agents they have a long way to go, just being able to write great code, but being able to test it out and see if everything is working, we see that as an independent function.
You said it's this really interesting intersection where the role of QA is likely going to evolve and change. How do you see the role as it is today? And then what does a quality organization look like in the future?
The expectations from these roles are very quickly changing. In that, in the old world, a quality engineer would have been responsible for writing and maintaining automation scripts, or actually performing the actions to test out different flows, right? Those would have been the biggest thing that you'd be spending your time on. And if you really think about it, it's also the lowest leverage way to spend your time, right? You're doing the same thing over and over again. You are embedded within a team, within an organization. So have a lot of context about your product, what your users care about, but you're not really leveraging that information. You're actually spending most of your time just doing this repetitive task of either if you automate it out, maintaining these things, or going through the testing aspect of things. So if you're really excited about the manually going through these different flows or writing automation scripts, then I think you may not be excited about what we do, which is that we're kind of like taking over those aspects of the testing function. Some of our customers work with some great QA folks across different companies. They are very embedded into the product side of things. They're very familiar with what's coming. They're very familiar with what their users care about. And they work with Pi to ensure that the coverage remains really high. And when Pi is reporting issues, they're able to really understand the context for whether is this a legit bug? Is it not? Why did Pi think this was a bug? And helping us add the missing gaps to make sure that we are able to provide them the better coverage in the future. So the role is definitely changing. You're now going to be more aligned with your team, with your company, with your product, and less of your time is going to be spent on the manual process of actually testing out your application.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you see QA over time being less of a separate role and either more in the engineering product or product engineer space, and they may work with a Pi more directly? Is that kind of staffing wise where you see this going?
I think what we're seeing overall is all roles seems to be merging into one, right? On our team, we have designers pushing code, something that would have been unimaginable a few months ago. And we have product managers pushing code. We have GTM folks pushing code. So there is this melting pot that's happening. And I'd be very surprised if the QA role doesn't go through the same evolution. So I'm guessing there will be folks within a team who will probably be more quality conscious and will be more excited about understanding and fixing quality related fixes. But whether there's going to be a distinct role or not, I'm not sure.
You obviously have an interesting wedge in terms of quality and really understanding the product as a way to go add value to a customer. But where do you see Pi, 2-3 years in the future? What's the vision for your company in the space?
The product is at the heart of most organizations, right? It is what's driving the big chunks of the business forward. But if you really look at specifically the larger organizations, they're pretty far disconnected from what's going on the product day to day, right? Things are moving really fast on the engineering or product development side of things. Like somebody on the, customer support may not be familiar with the new stuff that's happening. Different parts of the product even may not know what's going on the other side of things. It's the context. It's pretty hard to keep up with everything. So what we are actually providing is we are going through your entire product, like literally day in and day out, maybe even many, many times a day. When we go through and test your product, we actually develop a very good understanding of the way most of these features work in the latest build. So we have the most up-to-date information on how your product is evolving. And organically, we're seeing many different parts of the organization excited about what we're doing. Yesterday, we had a call with one of our customers on the content management side of things. And specifically, they're working on basically making sure that the help center articles are up to date. And we kind of like showed them what they can do using Pi, and the fact that, hey, we have the latest version of your app screenshotted. You can download a screenshot. You can see the different flows. You can see what has changed. You can even use Claude Code with PyMCP to generate help center content in any languages, right? And they were so excited about what we do. I think I heard the line, I think I'm going to cry, because a part of their job involved going through the flow, screenshotting it and uploading it into the application. And, as you add more languages and so on, right, it just becomes extremely tedious part of the process that we can, literally automate it and make it like a few minutes of your day instead of hours and hours of your day.
I like it.
And this was something that, we did not expect to be, having conversations with, I guess, the customer support / content teams at this part of the thing, but very excited about that.
I like the line, pie making people cry. May not be the best for marketing unless they understand their tears of joy, but that's really cool. And yeah, you're right. Like once you own product context and product understanding, there's so many different areas in the organization that you can add value. So it's such a interesting asset to own. Well, this was fantastic. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Nik. Great conversation.
All right. A few things stood out to me from that conversation. The first is that AI coding tools may actually make QA more important, not less. If tools like Claude Code, Cursor, and Copilot help engineering teams ship more code faster, then the next bottleneck probably becomes validation. Does the product still work? Do the core user flows still make sense? Did something break outside the narrow context of what the agent was working on? And that's why this is still an open category. Maybe coding agents eventually own more of the testing layer, but today they do not necessarily understand the full product, the user journey, the business rules, or the context behind how the product is supposed to behave. That is an opening for companies like Pi. The second takeaway is that Pi is not just trying to automate QA scripts. The deeper idea is that QA is moving from script execution to product understanding. The old model was write a test, run the test, see if it passes. The new model is understand what the product is supposed to do, understand the flows users care about, and continuously validate whether the product still works the way it should. That is a much bigger idea than test automation. And the third takeaway is that context can compound. Once an AI system understands the live state of a product, QA may just be the first use case. The same context can help with documentation, support, enablement, onboarding, and other workflows across the company. So the broader applied AI lesson is that a company can start with a narrow wedge, build proprietary context in one workflow, and then expand into a much larger surface area of customer value over time. Thanks again for watching Terminal Value. I'll see you next week.